Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this auspicious day.
Good morning.
How many people in here are familiar with Mrs. Danning's work? Oh. So we can...
I've been around. That
You've
means
been-
I've
you-
been around.
Sounds so
Right?
naughty. So we
Thank
can
you.
do some deep dives. And I want, first, before we get to your illustrious career, I want to expound on our conversation that we had about Christopher Lee. And I was so touched with the conversation that we had and your interactions with him. What was like the best moment with Christopher and your relationship with one of the founding fathers of horror?
That's hard to say because I did 5 movies with Christopher, and it was always a pleasure. He is so professional, but also so very kind, and we became very close. The Howling 2, which is going to be showing tonight. Is everybody coming? At 8 o'clock, yeah, the showing. I will introduce the movie like it needs an introduction, but I'll be there. That was my last movie with him. And so, not just because it was the last movie, but also because I had a very special situation with him where he basically, after the other movies, gave me something very wise, because he is not only was an incredible actor, but he also is an incredible human being and loved his trade. And that's all he could talk about. I mean, we were laughing yesterday because I was saying that in the movies that we did, only once did his wife come with him. I don't even know, you probably don't even know who his wife was. She's a very beautiful and was a very well-known Parisian model, and always dressed to the hilt. But she never came along to his movies. She let him go do his thing. And but once we did another movie that we did together. It was called Albino, and we shot that in Africa. And I arrived there, and I have to tell this story because you don't know
It's
it.
glorious.
Yes, it's adorable. I arrive and I come out. There's a pool by the hotel, and who's sitting with Christopher? His wife. And so I walked up to her, and we became good friends. And I said, Gita, her name is Gita. I said, Gita, what are you doing here? I mean, you know, it's dust and dirt and heat and sweaty and dirty and no shopping, no glamour. No. You're here in Africa? This is a new one. She says, darling, they have emeralds here. So I looked at Christopher and I said, all right, Christopher, get ready. All the money you're going to make on this movie is going to go for an emerald ring for her, okay? So he didn't mind that. He didn't mind it at all. So I sat down, and the funny thing is, I don't know if you know that about him, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't gamble, but Gita did it all, and so did I. So what do? She brings out the cards, we're gambling, we're drinking bourbon, which we have also.
Which a big, yeah. Yeah. Just,
Also
yeah.
something my king and I have
Yeah,
in
so
common.
it's a kinship.
Yeah.
Once you go bourbon,
Yeah.
that's all that's left.
Yeah. So we're drinking bourbon. Christopher is not. We're smoking cigarettes. He's not. So we're there gambling, smoking, drinking, having fun, and he sits there the whole time. And it was the same thing throughout the movie when we got together and had dinner. And he would just tell me stories because Gita would just, roll her eyes and say, oh, I've heard that for the 20th time or the 50th time. And that's a part of Christopher that I think you might not have known. He was just hilarious, but he loved telling his stories. And his stories were all about his movies, his adventures, what he loved about the business. and basically he loved everything about the business. But when we did The Howling 2, that was still, I don't know if you remember, there's some very young people in here that maybe don't remember, that was behind the Iron Curtain. That was then Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, and the Russians were there. And so we had a spy after us. Actually, he was after Christopher, because I don't know who many people know, but he was actually a spy for the English during World War II. He was a Nazi hunter. And so, of course, we were being spied on, and we'd sit in the evening and have dinner. We shot, everything you saw on there was a real beautiful castle. That's why we were there. It's not far from my home. I'm from Austria, so Czechoslovakia and Austria are right next to each other, very close to the Austrian border, a beautiful, beautiful old castle, and that's where we shot. And every evening we'd have dinner in the same little restaurant there, and we'd come in, and there would be sitting this guy in the corner, a little short guy with very thick glasses, and I called it a dead squirrel, this dead squirrel toupee on his head, pulled into his face, like, Hollywood couldn't imagine, anything better, as a spy was sitting there with this frown on his face and very serious and just watching us, never said a word. When we came, he was there. When we left, he was there and probably followed us. And so that was an incredible thing that we had going, because we'd go there and we would talk, and that happened to be the night after I did the one time. You all know that I only became a full-fledged werewolf one time.
Yes. I was going to say Scream Queen, but yeah, we'll go with werewolf.
Yeah. So, and I have to back up for a moment before I tell you that, because that one time becoming a werewolf was not as easy as you think. Because when we got there, Philippe Mora, the director, received a package with the werewolf costumes from Hollywood. And he unpacks it, and he almost had a heart attack, because they were monkey outfits. They were monkey costumes. And he gets on the phone with Hollywood, and he says, "Hey, guys, we're not doing, Planet of the Apes. We're doing a werewolf movie. You got to send us werewolf costumes." And they said, "No, you got one shipment. You're not getting anything more, so make do with it," and actually hung up on him. And so we had wonderful people, as we always do, and here too how, special effects people are so important on a movie. They all got busy and they reworked everything. But there was nothing in there even for this blonde werewolf, first ever blonde werewolf. So Hollywood, I don't know where their brain was at that moment, but there was nothing there. So the director said, "Please, just try and, what are we going to do with Sybil?" And they said, "Well, we're going to have to just take, blonde hair in little strips and glue them from her legs up and cover her that way, because we don't have any costume to work with," and they needed more time to actually make a costume. But I think it actually worked out better, and everybody liked it. But I stood there for 8 hours. So now I'm sitting with Christopher that particular evening, and he says to me, he puts his hand on my hand, and he says, "Sybil, I am so proud of you." I said, "For what?" He said, "I know what you went through. I heard all about you standing there for 8 hours, not eating, not drinking, just standing there quietly so they could get their rows of hair glued on you." And it's like, imagine, you've all seen false eyelashes. It's like that, little strips like that. And that's how they covered my whole body. And he said, "Not only were you so professional in being patient and do it, taking that off was even worse than putting it on because the stuff that they needed, my skin is very sensitive. I have very light skin, and it was burning me. So that taking that off was worse than putting it on. But he said, you know, I'm sure that maybe throughout the whole thing you felt silly, you felt stupid, you thought, oh God, what did I get myself into? But he said, I could see from everything I heard, and you looked beautiful in it. You knew you had to do it because you're doing it for your fans. I mean, when you sign up to do a movie, you don't just say, okay, where's my check? You do it, and I do that, by the way. When I get a script, the first thing I do is I say, what's the role? And then I say, would my fans want to see me as that, you know? So he said, you're like me, and I want to tell you that. I want to praise you for that. So he was like my father talking to me, you know? He said, you keep doing that. That's the right thing to do, because if you don't take yourself serious in that costume, and even if you think it's silly or it could have been better or whatever, but your fans take it serious, so you have to take it serious. And just remember that. And even though, you know, and he knew I was like him in that sense anyhow, because I love my fans, and I know, hey, producers can produce and writers can write, but if you don't go to the theaters and you don't buy the movies, there are no stars. You make the stars. You make the people important that you go and see. So I want to thank you. And that's the most valuable lesson, actually, that Christopher was giving me. But he said, but you're like me anyhow. I know you because you proved it. And now I just want to tell you that I'm proud of you, that you did what you did. So a wonderful man. And we actually wanted to do another Howling, but it never came to it. Gary Brandner, I don't know if you know his name. He is the author of all the Howling books. And the director of Howling 2, Philippe Mora, and Gary Brandner and I were working already on, and we already had a treatment to go into a screenplay to do another Howling movie. And we could do it because it was going to be a book. So there's so many rights out there. But we really wanted to do it. And then Gary Brandner died. So we never got around to being able to do that. But I have good news, because about a week before I came here, I wrote a vampire movie that I think you all are going to love. And I thought, who could come on to produce it? And I actually was thinking of one of the major, or the major producer on The Howling 2. And I called him up. I dug up his number. And his son comes on. He says, hello, and same name. And I said, oh, I want to talk to you about a movie that I just did. It's a vampire movie, but you did a great, you know, werewolf movie. Let's do a vampire movie. And I have a distributor already, you know, kind of eyeing. They just want to know where else I'm going with it. And he said, oh, I'm the son. And he said, no, my father's been in bed for a year and a half. And he's been very ill. He fell, and he's in bed. But let me talk to him, and I have to, you know, be in between because he doesn't hear very well. So he gets off the phone, and he comes back, and he says, my father's been in bed a year and a half. And when I said, Dad, guess who's on the phone? He said, who? I said, Sybil Danning. He said his eyes lit up. The 1.5 years he's been in bed, I've never seen him so happy. And he said, oh my God, I want to talk to her, oh my God. And then we actually did, and his son was translating on, because he didn't hear, so I would tell him, he would tell his father right next to him in bed. And he said, yeah, I want to read your vampire movie, but Sybil, I also want to do a Howling. And I said, oh, wait a minute. He actually is the only person out there now, the only person that still has the rights to one movie, one Howling movie. And he said he wants to do that. And then his son came on. I said, is he serious? He said, yeah. He wants to make another movie, and he wants to do The Howling, but he wants to see your vampire movie too. So who knows? Maybe he'll do 2 movies. Maybe he'll walk tomorrow now. Maybe there'll be some miracle, because he has never shown so much happiness. You brought him so much happiness. So I think that might be happiness for him, for me, for the fans, for everybody.
See, and you were worried because you were a pill or a problem on the set of The Howling, and I don't know how you could be a problem. You're amazing. I think it's more of a him problem.
Well, let me tell you one little thing, and you just reminded me of something a little, and I think you want to hear that again, right?
Yes, absolutely.
When I called, and when his son said to his father, guess who's on the phone? And when he said Sybil Danning Howling, not only did he glow, but he also, when he came on the phone with me, when he came on to say Sybil, he said, what did he say exactly? He said, you're the one who threatened with all your ripping open your dress at the end of the movie not to do PR, right? I said, yeah, but we made a deal, right? We came to a deal and we settled like on half. So you guys remember there were a lot of tears at the end. And he said, but the movie was too short. We needed to extend it a little. So you helped out. And anyhow, it worked out. So I said, yeah. And so we agreed on half.
Well, I mean, it's made it into cinematic history. I mean, it's probably one of the most repeated scenes.
That's for sure.
And a lot of boyhood fantasies. So my question that I didn't ask you yesterday, do you prefer horror or sci-fi? Because there's another film that I absolutely loved, and you're an Amazon in this film, and it is so amazing. I had it on VHS. I wore it out. The Laserdisc version of it burned up because the Laserdisc player caught fire, and I was like, well, fuck. There that goes. But I did buy it in Blu-ray. But so sci-fi, horror, and can you tell me anything about you being an Amazon?
Well, I like both. I really do. I like both. And you're talking about Battle Beyond the Stars. That was the second movie I did when I came to America. So that's my story coming to America. The first one, not many people saw. It was called Cat in the Cage, and it was a thriller. I think I killed everybody in there, but the director and the producer. But it was a little movie. It was made by Iranian writer, director, producer. But then my agency calls and says, Roger Corman is doing this movie, and he wants you to play Saint Exmund, the Valkyrie warrior. And I said, oh, wow. Now, that's why I came to Hollywood. And when they sent me the script, because I was always a tomboy, I was always out with the boys, climbing trees and stuff. And I didn't have dolls. I had a clown, but I always grabbed him by the neck. So it was like, he was like my...
Tough love.
Yeah,
that's okay.
You better behave, yeah. I have a baby picture showing it, yeah. Okay. So I really love that movie because, like I said, I was always a tomboy. So I love that. I said, wow, flying a spaceship and shooting a ray gun.
And the costume, it is an elaborate setup.
Well, I think you can say, if you've seen my movies, between Howling 2 and that, and maybe also Amazon Women on the Moon.
Yes.
My costumes have always been amazing. And it's not because I come on and I say, oh, this is what I want. I just always have such wonderful costume designers that are so creative that I end up with these great costumes. But that movie was the most difficult as far as costumes is concerned because, and it wasn't so much, well, okay, the Valkyrie costume, we had problems shooting because of the hand plates. And the hand plates were styrofoam. That was styrofoam, painted in silver to look metal. But there was nothing in between. I mean, there was not, nylon in between holding that together or anything. So when I would shoot and I moved, well, my nipple came out. And Roger, cut, okay, do it again. And then I moved, and again, my nipple. He said, okay, glue her in. So then I have a gluing the hair on, gluing my nipples onto my costume. He didn't care, and it was okay. But again, taking it off.
I mean, you did lose a nipple doing that.
They're still there. It's okay. It worked out okay. So that was the problem with that costume. But the bigger problem was actually my warrior outfit, which was called the Dart, based on my spaceship. They were making fun of it, where they say, oh, you and your little spaceship. But I had the fastest one, and I saved the planet, okay? Committing my version of harakiri, kind of like, I think Akira Kurosawa would be very, very happy. But that outfit, I loved it, and so they said, yeah, that's your warrior outfit. We're going to call it the Dart. And they told the costume designer, how could we make that costume look like a dart or have something to do with her spaceship and her to connect that? And she said, you know what? We're going to cut little holes in a dart shape, and then we'll just connect them with buttons, and skin is under that, okay? However, that looks good on paper. But when I went in there with my curves, those darts became round and more skin was showing. So that, and I think you know that very well, yes.
Guilty.
No, I don't mean about the roundness.
Oh, sorry.
But
I was focused on the wrong thing there. Go figure.
no, I know you know about that too, but I think you also know that it was rotoscope.
It was, yes.
Yeah. So in television, whoever saw it on television, there was a big black glob here in front of my chest where I'm, flying the spaceship because of that reason, because it was just too sexy for television, So
You make John Boy blush. That's a Walton's joke for some of you. You're going to have to Google that one. Sorry.
no, he's a sweetheart. He was a sweetheart. Yeah. So I loved being a Valkyrie, of course. Yeah, it was beautiful. And being from Austria, it's.
It fit well. I mean, it wasn't a stretch. You did an amazing job. Is there anyone you haven't worked with that you want to? I mean, what's on the horizon? Who you're like, I want to do something with that person?
Joaquin Phoenix. I love Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, I love him. I'd love to work with him. There are a lot of actors, but he comes first to mind. Yeah.
I could see you doing another Harley, a better Harley. I don't know if that's possible. Maybe.
A better what?
Harley. He did his Joker.
Oh.
And Lady Gaga was his Harley, but.
Oh. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. Of all the people that you have worked with, though, who's left the biggest impression besides Christopher?
Well, I was in love with Richard Burton. Now that really ages me, but I don't care. I was in love with Richard Burton when before I did Bluebeard, and I read his book, and I knew all about him. So when I went to beautiful Hungary, to Budapest to shoot, I knew all about him. And after I did my first shoot, I remember leaving. The car was waiting for me to take me to my hotel with my little makeup bag. And a gentleman comes and takes me by the arm and says, Mr. Burton would like to invite you into his trailer. And I said, okay. And I hadn't met him yet because I didn't have a scene with him. And that day I was just, that was my first scene, and he didn't come on set or anything. So I thought maybe he wants to say hello, but here is this man that I really loved a lot and read about. And there he was sitting in his beautiful black outfit. Bottom line, we sat till 4 a.m. drinking vodka. That
What?
was vodka
No.
in those days.
How dare you?
That's vodka. He drank vodka, so I drank vodka. We drank vodka till 4 o'clock in the morning, and then he drove me in his Rolls Royce in Europe to the hotel, and he had his arm around me, and he said, I'm just a poor coal miner's son growing up, and now I'm sitting in this car with this beautiful Austrian blonde, and I'm very happy with life. Well, when we
I think that's on a poster somewhere.
When we get to the hotel, he was going to get out with me to my hotel. I said good night, got out, went through the circular door. I remember it very well, went up to my room and said, what an idiot I am. I am in love with this guy, and here I had my chance, and I didn't take it. But you know why I didn't? Because I had so much respect for that man and I loved him so much. I didn't want to be like everybody else, because on that movie, he slept with every woman that was on that movie. He did. Elizabeth wasn't there, but then she came because she heard, okay?
The rumors made it.
She heard, yeah. But I'm telling you, he slept. Raquel Welch, you name them, okay? And the European actresses, everyone, and including, the woman that I had my scenes with. And I didn't like that. When I got there, I was hearing, and that's why I don't want to mention her name, because she actually was saying, well, if Richard Burton would have had to make a career with a certain part of his body, he would not have been a star.
Ouch. So glue isn't going to help that, right? That doesn't fix that problem. No.
And I said, first of all, I don't want to be one of 5, because they were already there before me. Okay?
Right.
And I didn't want to feel like, okay, I'm next. And I'm glad I did, because that winter I was not here skiing, because I lived in Europe, but I was in Switzerland and in Geneva, up in the mountains in a beautiful hotel. And I walk into the hotel, and who was there? It was Richard and Elizabeth Taylor. They were there months after that very shoot, and there he was with his wife, and I walked up with the gentleman I was with, and we hugged, we put our arms around each other, and only Elizabeth gave me kind of a dark stare, because she didn't know who did sleep with her husband and who didn't. But we felt
probably
good
sitting there
about
thinking,
it.
oh, this woman definitely seduced this
Yeah.
bastard.
Yeah, but we felt very good about it. And then Elizabeth had her 40th birthday, and guess what? I was living in Munich in Germany, and I get a telegram, what you got in those days, telegram saying, you were invited to Elizabeth Taylor's 40th birthday in Budapest. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to go. But guess what? Next day, I got another one saying, I'm not invited. I'm uninvited, sorry, full. So I think someone made the list, and then someone slashed the list. And I'm sure, and I do know, the women that were there were not invited. And Elizabeth had the last say, so.
It is her party, and she's turning 40 again, so
That's
it
right.
happens.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the horror world, in comparison to the classic horror to the horror nowadays, which one do you prefer more? Which one do you enjoy more?
Well, I do enjoy the classic horror, like what Christopher has done. You know, I love the classic more. I my vampire movie is going to be I call it It Is, and there's no title because I'm not giving out the title. You cannot protect a title, so and it's a good title. So it's just Untitled. So Untitled horror slash sci-fi. And I, it's going to be classic horror. I, I am going to be doing the other type. I'll tell you about that movie in a moment. I am doing something new, so I have something new to tell you, and that is the not classic, but I wouldn't know how to write. I call them slasher movies, okay? I have a lot of respect for them because people love them, but I never grew up with them, and I never, you know, went to see them because I grew up in Europe and I didn't go to the movies very often. I was a big Elvis Presley fan. I saw his movies, but I wasn't into movies because I had to work very young. And so, and the theaters were terrible, you know, cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and you know, wooden chairs and expensive. So it wasn't like in America. You just didn't go to the movies unless you had a lot of money. And I never saw slasher movies, and it was not something I grew up with. And I think you probably do, and children love it and everything. And I have nothing against it, and I'm going to do one in December. I'm going to shoot. But I prefer the classic. Yeah, that's just me.
No, nothing. I'm huge Vincent Price fan. Pit and the Pendulum. Dr. Faz. No, I always mess that movie up. The Amazing. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So tell us about the film that you have coming up. You tease us with it, and then we need a payoff. What do you have coming up?
Well, I've worked with this director on 3 projects. Fred Olen Ray. Let me see which one you might know. I haven't done a horror movie with him. So The Tomb. I don't know if you've seen The Tomb, but anyhow, Fred Olen Ray was involved with this movie. He's a very good director, and it was done 30 years ago. And I've asked a few of my fans who came yesterday, and maybe a quarter of them knew about it. Let me know if you have ever heard of a movie called Jack-o'-lantern. Jacko-lantern. Yeah? How many? Let me see. Oh, wow.
See?
All right. Well, then you know,
That's
John.
the blockbuster generation right there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I
just so
see.
you know.
Yeah. So then you remember John Carradine. Okay, so Fred Olen Ray calls me and he says, Sybil, I want to do another movie with you. And I don't have a script or anything like that, and I'm still raising the money, but I need you to be attached so I can raise the money. And he's honest about that. And I said, okay, and what's the role? And he said, well, I can see you. Did you see the movie? I said, no. He said, see the movie, but you will be playing a kind of role that John Carradine played. Not the same, but it's going to be very strange, very weird, very good for you. And every movie that he and I did, he made money on. So I signed blindly, and we're going to shoot, and it's going to be Jacko 2. And it'll be out, he's going to get that out early next year. Yeah, we're going to start shooting in December in Florida. We're going to shoot it in Florida.
At least you're going to be comfortable. Do you still get like butterflies? Do you still get anxious when you are about to get on set and start filming again? Or is it just like putting on your favorite warm sweatshirt fresh out of the dryer?
No, I love my work. I've turned down a lot because I didn't like the role, or I didn't like mainly it's the role, okay? And I've had people come to me with slasher movies, and they said, Sybil, this is for you. And I said, okay, what role do I play? And he said, oh, well, you know, you're this woman, and then they kill you. And I said, wait a minute. I don't play victims. If you want me to play the killer, I'll play the killer, okay? No. Yeah.
That's the moral of the story. Don't be the victim.
No, I mean, listen, that's why I have equal, I can say 50-50 women, male fans because I play strong women's roles. And I like doing that. I don't want to play a victim. And I remember after I did Chained Heat, I don't know if who saw that, but I remember going to a restaurant after that, and there's this young girl who does a double take, and she comes, the waitress, and she's, you're Sybil Danning. I said, yeah. She said, I saw your movie 3 times. She said, you know what? You gave me so much strength. I was going to lose my job. But I said, no, I'm Sybil Danning. I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight. You gave me so much courage. And, you know, in there we fight each other, right? The whites against the blacks. And then we say, no, to hell with this. We're going to go against authority, okay? We're going to just go in there and make sure everything's done right. And I just feel better doing that. And you know, when I was a little girl, I went to a junkyard where they had cars, and I pretended to drive, and I had my little boyfriend next to me, but I was the driver. Yeah.
I can see that actually very clearly. I mean, that doesn't come as a surprise. Well, we are about to hit time, unfortunately, but you are signing over at your table.
Yes.
How can...
Time is never enough.
It is never enough. I mean, but there's the bar.
We're going to do more.
We are going to do more. I have to tell you guys this fun story because I saw her earlier when she got here, and she's wearing these breakfast at Tiffany style sunglasses eating dinner, and I wanted to go over and talk to her, and I'm just like, no, I can't. And I'm always wearing my sunglasses, but I'm like, see if Sybil Danning can do it. God damn it, I can wear my sunglasses in the middle of the night.
Why not?
Exactly.
Of course, yeah.
So how do the fans here and the viewers around the world follow you and keep track of your adventures?
Pardon?
Your socials? What's your social media?
Oh! I still have to give you that card, right?
Well, that's another story. We got that taken care of.
I'm on everything that is out there, but you can go to sybildanning.net, and that's my website, and you'll have everything there. Okay.
Excellent.
And then I'm going to give you the card with it.
No, we got that taken care of. We had an interview, so it'll be on our social media in addition to her own. So we're all set. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sybil Danning, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.